Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community, is brought to you by Handi Quilter, designed by a quilter for quilters. ROBERIKAUFMAN Fabrics, quality fabrics for quilting. Sulky, express yourself with sulky and create with confidence. Brother, it's so easy with Brother at your side. And The Warm Company, inspiring products for creative people.
Hi and welcome. I'm Lori Baker with Quilters Newsletter Magazine. With me today is Cheryl Duncan, and she is from Handi Quilter. Cheryl, as an educator with Handi Quilter, I imagine you get lots and lots of questions about tension. So can you tell me some of the high spots?
I can. We do get a lot of questions about Handi Quilter, and tension is very critical to your quilting because if you don't have proper tension on your stitches, your quilts aren't going to look good. So really quickly, Lori, there are so many different kinds of threads out there. There's cottons, there's polyesters, there's rayon, there's metallics, there's silk, there's a mylar ribbon thread, which is a flat ribbon thread. There's the clear threads, the nylons or the monopolys, and all of them work really well in the Handi Quilter machine. But you've got to learn how to adjust your tension, and each one of these threads takes a different tension. The other thing that's real critical is the needles. You want to make sure that you have the proper needle size and the proper type of needle in order to work with the thread that you've got.
Okay.
So really quickly, I'm going to point out my wonderful needle here. You should see my quilting machine at home. This needle is representing a quilting machine needle. The shank on it is round. And the reason it's a round shank is that these quilting machines are operating at such a high speed that they're going up and down so fast that you need that extra strength. A domestic machine is actually has about a third of it shaved off, and so it's not as strong of a needle. This groove down the front of the needle is the place that your thread actually lies. If your needle is too small for your thread, it's going to rub as it goes up and down, and it's going to shred and it's going to break on you. The eye of the needle holds the thread in place, and if you can't thread that eye easily, you know that your needle is too small and that you need to bump up to a larger needle. The other important point on a needle is this scarf in the back or the indentation. What happens with this is where the hook actually passes by the needle inside the bobbin case area and catches that thread to form the loop.
Okay.
So all of these areas on the needle are important, and we have to have the right size needle for the thread that we're using. The next point on our tension is the bobbin case. The bobbin is actually the foundation of our machine stitches, and so you've got to have your bobbin case set properly in order for you to have good tension. What you want is you want the bobbin case in your hand. You want to be able to just pull it up out of your hand and have it slide down. So obviously,
Too tight.
this is way too tight. And with this, if I've got my bobbin tension too tight, I'm not going to get a good stitch. This one, I can't even pick it up out of my hand.
So that one's too loose.
It is too loose. So this one, hopefully, is just right. I want to be able to lift it up out of my hand and have it slide down just like that.
Okay.
If I've got a good tension set in my bobbin case, then my adjustments are going to be in the top tension. And I would much rather adjust my top tension than crawl under the machine and have to adjust my bobbin tension all the time. If your bobbin case isn't set correctly, this top screw right here with the ring around it is the screw that you're going to use to adjust your tension on your bobbin case. The thing that you need to remember is that the adjustments on the bobbin case are very, very small, kind of like a tick of a second on a clock, where the adjustments on the top tension, sometimes you'll have to turn it at least a half to a full revolution before you ever get any kind of a change in your stitch.
Okay.
So what happens if we've got our bobbin tension set wrong? I've got a sample here that I'm going to show you. This first one, if you look really close here, you can see that the stitches are okay. They're not really, really great. And I get spots that the thread kind of pulls apart and breaks there. I've got spots that are skipped. but look at the back tension.
Oh dear.
I know that when we did this sample, my bobbin tension was set correctly. So knowing that my bobbin tension was set correctly, all of my adjustments are going to be on the top. So when I've got my thread like this, I know that I have to tighten that top tension in order to pull it back up. So on this case, I would tighten my top tension to get a nice smooth stitch. In this sample, if you look closely, you can see that I've actually got my thread just kind of lying here on the fabric. It's not really sinking and making a good stitch, and you can actually see my bobbin coming up from the bottom. This means that my top thread is actually too tight and it's pulling that bobbin thread up. So I would want to loosen my tension in order to let that thread sink back down in. The back looks okay, but knowing what it looks like on the front, I wouldn't want to do that. This next one, my stitch looks really good and it's formed very well. Let's look at the back side of it. It looks pretty good back there too, but if you look closely, you can see that I'm getting puckering and gathering on this. What's happened here is both my bobbin and my top thread are too tight. And what's going to happen if you've got both your tensions and you've got a good stitch and they're correct, they're still too tight. You're going to be able to stitch for just a little while and that thread is going to break. So what you would have to do in this case is you would have to actually loosen your bobbin tension and start all over again. So you'd want to loosen your bobbin tension and then you would want to loosen your top tension also. In this last sample, look how nice those stitches look. I've got a well-defined stitch. It's not puckering, it's not gathering. Let's look at what the back side looks like. It looks good too, except that you notice that you can see a little bit of the blue thread. I still have a well-defined stitch, but for this sample, we actually did this on purpose. Normally, I would recommend that you use the same color of thread on the top and on the bottom, but I wanted you to be able to see this. This actually isn't the top thread coming down. You're actually seeing that thread through the hole. So if my thread matched, you wouldn't notice that. But I do have a very well-defined stitch, and it's sinking both in the top and on the bobbin. Okay? One thing that we have here, Lori, is I have a chart. If you look at example A, you can see that this is actually what it looks like when the top tension is too tight. Your bobbin thread lays on the bottom of that fabric and your top tension is actually coming up to the top. In this case, I would need to loosen my tension in order to let that thread sink back down into my quilt. On example B, my top tension is too loose and it's actually being pulled down to the bottom, and that bobbin thread is lying along the quilt, but you can see my top thread down here. So in order to bring this thread up, I need to tighten that tension back up. So see, it's not so hard.
Not so hard at all. You made it really easy to understand.
And once you've got your tension set correctly, you're going to be much happier quilting.
I'm sure that's true.
It is.
Okay, well, thank you so much. We appreciate Cheryl being here with us today from Handi Quilter and telling us all about tension.
Quilters Newsletter TV, the Quilters community, is brought to you by Handi Quilter, designed by a quilter for quilters. ROBERIKAUFMAN Fabrics, quality fabrics for quilting. Sulky, express yourself with sulky and create with confidence. Brother, it's so easy with Brother at your side. And The Warm Company, inspiring products for creative people.